implications from history of both peoples. This is part, you all know that the narratives, it is not only the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, is playing a huge, huge role. And one can deal with the narratives. And one of them is to respect the memories of the others, even though you believe that these memories refer to events that were done against you. But understand that for the other side, it's part of the story. And you cannot demand the other side to forget it or to denounce it. Another one is, if possible, to build or to establish a joint committee to deal just with the story, with the narrative. People say that that there is a huge gap between the narratives of the Palestinians and the Israelis. It may be true, but the narrative is connected, if not built on, facts. And I think that we can really sit together and refer to the facts so that it will not be just a narrative on the one side against the narrative of the other side, and the most liberal way is to say, I hate you, I don't want to meet you, but I respect your right to have your stupid narrative. No, I believe that we can write a joint narrative, and it will have an impact because words are playing a very important role in our story. It's not only deeds. And I can, in a way, prove it because Dr. Hiba Husseini, which will be online immediately, and myself led the two groups of Israelis and Palestinians who published 2 years ago a book about a potential confederation between Israel and Palestine. And a very important part of this book is a joint narrative. We worked on it for about 2 years. And we did not shoot each other during these negotiations. Eventually we saw that if mature people, if adults who are knowledgeable about the story and who can understand the story of the other, if they sit together, they can write a joint narrative. Now imagine, there will be people on the Israeli side and Palestinian side which will say, no, you submitted to the others and whatever, you gave up on your own story, you cannot do it. Okay, but most of the people will be happy with it. And if it is possible to have something like that in the school systems, it doesn't mean that people will have to learn it by heart and know only that. But they should also know that it is possible to have a joint narrative. So this is one of the issues that I believe should be done. Speaking about the things which are happening today, all the Israeli hostages should be released and that IDF should withdraw from the Gaza Strip. The kind of a multinational trusteeship should be established. My model is the model of Hiba Husseini, and this is the model of Cambodia in 91. Cambodia in 91 was a success story. For 18 months, it was a multilateral force in security, in police, in administration, led by a Japanese diplomat. Tens of thousands of people from 48 countries were part of this trusteeship led by the UN. And after 18 months, the key was brought back to the Cambodian people, and Cambodia became a democracy. Now, it sounds like a miracle. There were difficulties. It did not happen exactly as they wanted. But I don't know about a better model for what we can do if we decide so. Now, at the end, I mean, we should agree upon it now that Gaza and the West Bank will be part of the future independent and sovereign Palestinian state, of course. We don't have any better solution than the two-state solution. For the Palestinians, the most important thing is to fulfill their right for self-determination. For us, the most important thing is to be and remain Jewish and democratic state. If we are becoming a minority of Jews who are dominating a majority of Arabs, it's the end of our story. In reality, it is the end of our story. Israel was established after the Holocaust so that there will be a Jewish state. This is the UN resolution. Had the Arabs agreed to have a Palestinian and Arab state in 1947, the whole story could have been different. I know why the Arabs rejected it. I don't blame them. But regretfully, I mean, even Abu Mazen admitted that it was a mistake. So we should both fix it. As to the permanent agreement, the PLO and the Israeli government will negotiate peace based on the recognition of both peoples to statehood without prejudice to the rights of the minorities on both sides. The parties will recognize Palestine and Israel as the homelands of their respective peoples and will commit themselves not to interfere in each other's affairs. The negotiations will take into account previous drafts and formal and informal previous negotiations. They don't have to invent the wheel, and they don't need 50 years in order to negotiate. A year is enough. A year and a half, okay. But otherwise, it is just excuses not to get to the end result. And I'm just mentioning some of the agreements which have been formally or informally achieved. The first one was, if I may say so, and I'm sorry to mention my name, the Begin-Abu Mazen Agreement of '95. 2 years after Oslo, the President Mahmoud Abbas and myself had a paper which was eventually leaked after a few years. And that was the basis for the Camp David talks and others of a two-state solution. And we solved all the issues, all the outstanding issues. From the border, we have maps for the division of Jerusalem, for the division of the land, the two states, for the refugees, and you name it. It was possible already then, but regretfully, it was the assassination of Rabin which also killed this agreement. And then the Clinton parameters, I mean, with all due respect, it was more important than ours, of 2000, which also referred to all the thorny or the outstanding issues. Then the Arab Initiative of 2002, which was very short. It is more a declaration than a detailed plan. But still, it refers to all the issues and was very, very important. And it could be one of the bases for the negotiations. The Ayalon-Nusseibah agreement of 2002. It was more like a declaration, but a very, very important, and it is one of the milestones. The Geneva Accords of 2003, which is the most detailed peace agreement, a draft of a peace agreement. You have there all, including 500 very boring pages of annexes. We refer to everything, from water to the electromagnetic space. So if somebody really, and it cannot be implemented tomorrow, in the same day, in the same way, because there were changes in reality that you have to refer to. But generally speaking, you can really do it quickly. And I think that if you add to it the idea that we published 2 years ago about a confederation, which will allow, among other things, which will solve the issue of the settlements, because part of the settlements, which on a very small part of the West Bank, which will be land swap apart from the Israeli sovereignty, but all those who will find themselves in the future Palestinian state, will be allowed to stay there as Israeli citizens and Palestinian permanent residents, and the same number of Palestinians who would like to live in Israel would be permanent residents of Israel and citizens of Palestine, with something which is not connected to the issue of the refugees, which has a different solution, which I won't get into. But it has nothing to do with this idea of residence, because the refugees who will be allowed to Israel will be full citizens. I'm concluding my words by saying today to speak about peace is something which, at least in Israel, and maybe not only there, say, hey, how can you speak about these things? But usually you have peace after wars, especially when our war was not against the PLO, but as a result of an attack of crazy people who cannot continue and be part of the Palestinian government or leadership tomorrow. So, I mean, those of us who say if you make peace now, if you have you agree to a Palestinian state now, it is a prize for the Hamas, I don't think so. I think that for them it is the biggest punishment. They were never supporting a two-state solution. If you ask them today if this is the solution, they will say no. So it is, if you wish, a punishment to Hamas and not a prize. It is a prize for us, those who believe in peace, those who believe that the other side has exactly the rights that you have, and believe that it is not our role to hand over this problem to the next generations, but to solve it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Muslim. Mr. President.
Good morning, everybody. More than 30 years ago, it was exactly in 1990, I was invited to attend a conference organized by the Nobel Committee in Oslo. And this meeting was organized by somebody I admire, I like very much, with Elie Wiesel, Nobel Peace Prize winner and Holocaust survivor. In this meeting, there were Nelson Mandela, Jimmy Carter, Václav Havel, and also, at the time, the mayor of Jerusalem, Ehud Olmert. The topic of this conference was, why do we hate each other? Why do we hate each other? I remember very well that Mr. Ehud Olmert had a discourse so violent against Arabs, against Palestine, that I left the room. I quit because I said, look, I didn't come here at this conference dealing with such an important question to hear hate speech against Arab and against Israelis. But I must say that at that moment, of course, Ehud Olmert didn't know that he would become Prime Minister of Israel and that I would become President of Tunisia. At that time, I was very optimistic because I thought that, you know, probably you remember this shake hand between Mandela and de Klerk and the handshake after between Yasser Arafat and Rabin. So at that time, I was very optimistic. I said, look, maybe the choice is not between war and the two-solution state. Maybe we were going to have the choice would be probably the two solution states. And even I dreamed of what I call Mandela solution. Why not a solution like in South Africa, in Belgium, or in Canada? It means the same country for two peoples living together peacefully, respecting each other, etc. But now I must really, I'm sorry to tell you that for me that now the problem is the choice for the moment between endless war and war forever. This is the situation we have to ask ourselves. Is now 30 years after this meeting, we didn't respond to the question, why do we hate each other? So the question now for me is the solution, is in fact the choice we have, both Arabs and Israelis, is between endless war and war forever. Why do I say this? Because look, if the Israelis have, because of what happened the 7th of October, let's say doubled their hate against Israelis and Arabs, I can assure you that hatred against Israelis because of what happened in Gaza, tenfold. And am I really afraid of this wave of hatred that is, coming like a tsunami in this area? So when I hear Mr. Netanyahu talking about, destroying Hamas, I say to myself, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. Because I can assure you that, you have to know that Hamas, for 400 million of Arabs and 1 billion of Muslims, Hamas is a resistance movement, national resistance movement, like the ANC in South Africa, like the FNL in Algeria, like the IRA in Ireland, etc., etc. And I can assure you that now, for the moment, because of what's happening in Gaza, I'm afraid, because I'm a human rights activist, I've peaceful solution are for me the best solution, etc. But I see that, for millions and millions of young Arabs now, Hamas is the example to follow. And, why? Because we are so astonished by the reaction of Israel. The level of violence against the Gaza, imagine that somebody would slap your face and your response would be to cut his head, to cut the head of his mother, of his father, to kill his kids, to kill his dog, to steal his car, and to burn his house. This is what's happening currently. Of course, what's happened in the 7th of October was terrible, but now you have to deal with every life, is equal to other life. This is the principle. But look, you have 28,000 people killed. You have 60,000 people wounded. You have the destruction of the whole Gaza. And the worst is coming. Now they are talking about, invading Rafah, which means that the Holocaust, the new Holocaust, this is a new genocide going on. So when I hear you, Mr. Yusuf, talking about what should be done, etc., I see the main thing, the most important thing to do is to stop this wave of hatred. This is the main objective. This is my objective as a human rights activist, as somebody who has some moral influence on the Arab world. For instance, every time I go to on a television program about the situation, my speech is always the same. Look, you Arabs, don't forget that we have here now in London, in Paris, in Berlin, everywhere we have rallies against the situation in Gaza, and many of them are Jews. I would like to salute for their courage and their humanity. So please don't forget this. This is my way, to participate to the end of this wave of hate. So now what I'm asking everybody now to do something, to put the pressure on Israel, not only to stop the genocide in Gaza, to stop what they are doing, to tell them, look, you are committing it's suicidal for you at the long range. Don't forget that you have millions and millions of Arabs now, young Arabs, dreaming only to be part of Hamas. So you are really destroying everything that we would like to see, peace and so forth. Stop. You are committing suicide. You are not destroying only Gaza, you are only destroying yourself. Stop what you are doing. This is the message that should be delivered everywhere so we can stop this wave of hatred. And then when this, I hope, this wave of hatred is over, then we can resume talking about what should be done. Because no, Mr. Yusuf, talking about the new, it's like, talking about what a burned man should put on his, what kind of clothes that should be done. No, he's burning, he's suffering. It's too early to talk about it. Now, for the moment, you have to stop this, the horrible genocide going on in Gaza. So please, if I may say, I didn't come here, to discuss to say, look, there is a wave of hatred to population, and we have to stop it, because otherwise, once again, the choice would be war. The choice of the new generation would be whether it will be war forever or endless war. We cannot accept this choice for the new generation. It's terrible, because it means the destruction of the whole region. Sorry, I have to stop here, because I really don't have anything else to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Youssef. I think we'll be with you. I think we'll go to you, then we'll go to virtual. We have Mr. Levy waiting as well. We'll go to him quickly.
Go ahead, yes. So, thank you. Thank you, President. Thank you, Yossi. I have to say I agree with everything you say about the urgency of our current situation, of the desperation of the people in Gaza who absolutely need immediate help, assistance, and we need to stop the killing now. I also hear you and agree with you, Yossi, about the need to build for the future, because that's the only thing that we have. And in the end, as you pointed out, you only make peace in war. We're not actually in a war. What's happening right now is an attack on a number of people who live in a small, secluded and blockaded enclave. And that is not a war between the Palestinians and the Israelis. It's a war on the Palestinians. It's a war on Hamas, as so portrayed by the current government, but actually it's a war on all of us. And there is not a Palestinian that I know that has not lost family and friends in the current campaign against Gaza. This is a war that is impacting every single Palestinian, and as the President pointed out, is inflaming anger and passions across the region, and is making the world an increasingly less safe place for Israel and for any other country that supports it. So we have to do something. We have to do something for the Palestinians, for the people of Gaza, but we also have to do something because we want the region to live in peace. And that's what we're trying to focus on. I agree that it seems impossible to find a way, and we have been trying for many years, to reach a two-state solution. Palestinians and Israelis left to their own devices have not managed to achieve that, and that is really just the worst of many possible solutions, as you know. I mean, I'll say this as a person, I think that nation states, ethnic states are an anachronism. I can't believe that we're still talking about this in 2024. But as a Palestinian who needs to fix things back home, I realize that a two-state solution is the best and quickest solution to allow people to live in peace. But in order to get there, it is clear that we're going to need serious international help. An international force, as mentioned by Yossi, to come in and provides peace and security for all civilians, meaning Palestinians, but also Israelis, to put a gap between us and them to the extent that we need that gap, because we need to feel safe in order to be able to then proceed with what we are going to do in the future. And if we want to be able to have elections, both on the Israeli side and amongst the Palestinians, we need to do this while feeling safe and secure. We need to do this with a very clear understanding of what our future holds. And that means that we need to know that we, on the Palestinian side, are electing a government for a free, independent, and sovereign state. Just as on the Israeli side, they know that they're electing a government which is going to be living in the new state of Israel according to internationally defined borders. So, I think that there are many elements of the plan that Yossi mentioned that make a lot of sense. What doesn't make sense is what's happening right now internationally. And I'm slightly concerned that all of these initiatives that are now being discussed and proposed and mentioned in the press about focusing on Gaza, focusing on temporary solutions, it's a band-aid for, as you said, a burning man. We need this to stop now. And we need the international community to step up and do something different to what it's been trying to do for the last 30 or 40 years. We need them to step up and do something majorly different. Agree and state that what the Israeli government is doing is just wrong. We don't have to look into understanding traumas. We all have trauma. We don't need to try to understand the reasons or the tactics or the strategy. There is no reason for what is happening. It is just wrong. And unless the international community, led by the United Nations, the United States, or whoever decides that they want to take a leadership role in this, unless they step up and actually put a stop to it, doing something different to what they did before, then we're going to end up in the same place over and over again. As you pointed out, endless war or peace right now. And peace right now means doing something different.
Thank you very much. I don't know if Daniel Levy is hearing us at all. Just testing.
I am. Are you hearing me?
Yes, we are. Thank you very much. Former advisor to the Israeli peace talk team and prime ministers, currently a member of European Council on Foreign Relations. Mr. Levy, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry I cannot be with you. Thank you for allowing me to join in this way. I had the honor of working with Dr. Balin in the past, and it's always worth paying close attention to what he says. I don't find myself in agreement on this occasion. I find myself aligned with President Marzuki and with what Dr. Nusseibeh just shared with us, with what Jamal just shared with us, in terms of the precious urgency of now. And let me share three thoughts with you and begin with that one. Where we need to be focusing is not on, you will read about this, some plan over the horizon, how we will add more symbolic rhetoric to the idea of a future Palestinian state, some dim and distant notion. We've been in this peace process for 30 years. I would humbly suggest this is a distraction from preventing yet further appalling civilian suffering inside Gaza. 1.5 million kettled into Rafah on the precipice of an even more horrendous moment, potentially. Anything that is a distraction from getting that ceasefire should be treated as such. And I don't know whether it's helpful to say these crazy people here or those crazy people there, and who's a terrorist and what's state terror. I think it's more useful to stick with international law. If what the people did on October 7th was crazy, I don't know how I can describe the statements of the Israeli leaders and the actions of the Israeli government and military. So let's set that aside. Hamas must act within international law. People under a belligerent illegal occupation have the right to self-defense. They do not have the right to violate international law. A state actor such as Israel absolutely has the right to self-defense. It does not have the right to be plausibly committing a genocide and now to be in violation of the provisional measures called for by the International Court of Justice in order to prevent that possible genocide. So that means a laser focus on ending the current assault on Gaza. That's also how the hostages will be returned. I think that's where our initial attention should be. But I would also like to suggest that we should be able to hold three thoughts simultaneously. Number one, what happened on October 7th has no justification, must be rejected as violating international law. Number two, what Israel has done subsequently has no justification. Remember, it was on day one that the Israeli leadership said, we will cut all food, fuel, electricity, water to the entire population. Is that focusing on the perpetrators of October 7th? Clearly not. It's disproportionate, it's collective punishment, it's criminal. But number three, we should be able to hold the thought that history did not begin on October 7th. October 6th was a relatively normal day for Israelis. It was another day of denial of freedom and rights, basic dignity and hope for the future for Palestinians. It was another regular day of apartheid for Palestinians. Now, my friend Yossi referred to agreements in the past, some of which I had the privilege to be involved with. Most of those were informal or suggested by the outside. Unfortunately, the reality today that no one on the Israeli political expanse who is vying for leadership of the country comes anywhere close to those positions. So whatever the intention of Oslo, the reality of Oslo is that partitioning small areas for limited Palestinian self-governance has been part of a system of controlling land, controlling resources, of demographic engineering, of where Palestinians are limited to living and how Israelis' areas are expanded. In short, it is part of a separate and unequal and structurally violent system, which has credibly, by the leading human rights organizations, not only among Palestinians, but in Israel and in the international arena, been defined as meeting the legal definition of the crime of apartheid. This is not a one-to-one analogy with South Africa. It's an internationally recognized crime. So this has become a Bantustan. And what I would say about that is I don't know. President Marzuki said, it seems that in the one space reality that has been created, it is more reasonable to fight for equality in that space than for separation. That sounds very reasonable to me. But whether it is a genuine end of occupation or equality within that one space, we will get nowhere. We will get nowhere if the crimes being committed in the denial of Palestinian rights are met with impunity. And this is the crucial missing understanding of how we got here, of the root cause. Israel has been encouraged down this path by no accountability, no costs or consequences. That is the handmaiden to the extremism that we see in Israel today. And if I may make one final point, because I'm not, unfortunately, but you are, in Germany. And if I may humbly be allowed to express a concern of a different kind when it comes to Germany, the German policy, the debate inside Germany, how this is playing out. There is a terrible, I think, historically damaging mistake being made in aligning against international law. The German response to the International Court of Justice. If people have a moment, read the fascinating rebuttal by Namibia. You will know enough about German history to know the significance when it comes to genocide and Germany and Namibia. Read that exchange between Germany and Namibia from right now. in response to the International Court of Justice. I know, and I'm so pleased that it was mentioned, that there is Jewish, vocal, active opposition to the crimes being committed right now. And in Germany itself, just think about this, about 1/3 of the people who have been criminalized and cancelled and called anti-Semites for the positions they have taken on this war are Jewish, including many Israelis who didn't want to be living in that apartheid system, who historically, for reasons you will be well aware of, could claim German citizenship, came to Germany, and are now being told, you Israeli people of conscience who adhere to Jewish values, you're all anti-Semites. It would be a terrible path to go on if Germany now embraces anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Arab racism, Islamophobia, and the rejection of international law, and loses credibility in the world. Believe me, no one is listening to you anymore on Ukraine because of the double standards and the hypocrisy. And gets anti-Semitism all wrong and allows this killing to continue. If I may humbly leave you with that thought.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bailey. I suppose just for a finishing thought, Justice Minister Bailey might want to add, given maybe the balance of the panel, if something comes to your mind, and if you gentlemen have anything else to add, would be happy to have it before the...
I believe that the right thing to do was to tell the Hamas people, you cannot stay there in Gaza and rule the Gaza Strip after the 7th of October. If you leave Gaza, exactly as Yasser Arafat left Lebanon in 82, we are not going to do anything. And there should be a trusteeship, or of course, if the Palestinian Authority would be ready to get back into Gaza and to rule it, that should be the case. Hamas is not in such a situation. And the violence goes on because if today the IDF withdraws from Gaza and Hamas gets back to rule Gaza, so that is the paradox of this encounter. On the other hand, you have something now on the desk, on the table, and that is the Biden suggestion. I mean, if you reject it and say, oh, it's very bad because the two-state solution, always the Palestinian state will be in a worse situation than Israel or something like that, or that it is much more just to have a one-state solution. Who will accept it? The Palestinians who want self-determination? I will accept it as a Jew. Never. It's a dream. Why? I mean, there is a UN resolution of 47. Israel agreed to it. The Palestinians rejected it, and we can understand it. But to say to us after 75 years, forget about a Jewish democratic state and have a one state with a democracy of what? We know something about the democracy on the Palestinian side. Regretfully. It is far from being, you want a democratic state, number 23 in the Economist Index, before the United States. To be in one state with a state which is led by presidential decrees, who is a good friend of mine, as you may know. But he found himself writing decrees and establishing courts by decrees and things like that. Please, before you marry us, I mean, I'm supporting a confederation. But to have a one-state solution with rights to all, this is not a dream. I'm saying there is something which is realistic. Let us take, you know that Netanyahu is very much against the Biden plan. And of course he is wrong in doing it, and he made all the mistakes in the world. take the Biden plan. I did not see the plan, but I read the Washington Post, and I read the New York Times, the Tom Friedman's article. All these components should be grabbed by us and say, okay, you are the leader of the free world. You are suggesting something like that. You have the British support, and all of Europe will support the Biden's plan. Let's go for it. So when it is already in the air, we should now talk about what we should do and about justice and whatever. Yes, we should talk about justice. But once we begin to speak about these things, it becomes the easiest excuse for those who don't want a solution to put the preconditions. On both sides, there are experts in preconditions. Like with Bush 43. He said, first democracy. And on this democracy, Hamas got to power. I agree. Hamas, or the Muslim Brothers are everywhere in the Islamic world. It saddens me. But they are there, and we have to understand that they are there, and we cannot put an end to their spiritual existence. But they are not partners for peace. I mean, they are not ready. I tried to talk to Hamas, really, tried, badly. I said, just to talk to them, to understand better what do they want. But they, you know, after the Geneva Initiative was launched in Geneva, for 3 months, Hamas would have both funerals, for Yasser Abed-Rabo, who was my counterpart, and for me, taking our coffins from the mosque to the square, the main square in Gaza, and then burning them. Because we are the worst enemies of Hamas. Because we want peace. We want to share the land. So we are the worst enemies of Hamas, and we are the worst enemies of the extremists in Israel who believe that sharing the land is something which is totally against the ideas of God. And I suggest to ourselves not to become zealots on these issues. If we are, I mean, maybe I'm talking like that because I'm an old politician. But eventually, you have to swallow many things that you don't like. And if there is something which is realistic on the table, and if we miss this opportunity, Palestinians and Israelis, we will not forgive ourselves.
Thank you very much. Short rebuttals because we've gone over time. And I think we have Hiba Husseini with us, if I'm okay. Ms. Husseini, legal advisor to the Palestinian side in the talks. We'd love to hear your take as well, if you can hear us.
Thank you very much for having me. Well, it's very difficult to come after all these excellent remarks by these 4 panelists. So let me just, in the interest of time, not repeat what they said, but I agree with everything that was said. I think for me as a Palestinian who's from Jerusalem and who goes to the West Bank for my work on a pretty much daily basis, and who has family and friends in Gaza and colleagues, these are very, very trying times. And I agree that the first step is a ceasefire. There is no two-way about it. We must end this pain and suffering for the Gaza population and the spillover that is happening in the West Bank. Let's not forget that the Israeli settlers are loose in the West Bank, supported by the IDF, the army. And what is happening this morning, I mean, just, in Tulkarem refugee camp, Engineer refugee camp, there are incursions on a daily basis, Nablus everywhere in the West Bank. So I like to emphasize that because the situation is very, very on a boiling, is boiling, and the brink of explosion in the West Bank as well. If Rafah is not stopped, if 1.5 million people in Rafah who are stuck in 60 square kilometers, having been displaced from the north to the central of Gaza to the south in Rafah, and then pushed further and attacked, I think the situation will become extremely explosive. So To go back to the issues in terms of today, the way I look at them, we have three levels. We have the immediate, which is ceasefire and the humanitarian situation in Gaza, getting the food, medical supplies, hospitals, water, electricity, everything back. Stabilization of the Gaza Strip, of course, and then looking at the political horizon. I agree that the ICJ is a very important step for the Palestinians. Has been ignored by the current Israeli government. I think in terms of the situation on the ground, it's very important if Israel wants to have security and stability for Palestinians to have an end to occupation and to have freedom, dignity, and self-determination. That's why the political horizon along the lines of the stabilization of Gaza with multinational forces, and then the unity of the West Bank and Gaza Strip, and of course in due time elections, and then the political horizon are for negotiations and for whether it's a confederation, which I believe in, or it's other form of two-state solution, are very, very essential elements of looking to the future. So I think the immediate request today is for the US and Europe, Germany, other Europeans, and the Arab states, not just to keep giving us lip service. We need to stop this war on Gaza and reach a ceasefire. And the carte blanche that the US and Europe are giving to Israel is damaging to Israel, damaging to its security, to the credibility of the US and Europe, and that, of course, damaging the credibility of Israel. Look at what's happening in terms of demonstrations on the streets, popular demonstrations worldwide. This has to account for something in terms of the values, universal values of freedom, dignity, and human rights, adherence to international law, accountability, and all the other statements that have been made by colleagues. I, as a Palestinian living on the ground, do not want to see anything but an end to this occupation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hosseini. We really have time for 2 3-minute ones if...
What about Hamas? I must tell you that I'm secularist, socialist, human rights activist, doing everything for peace. My spiritual father is Gandhi and Mandela. So I am very, very far from the ideology of Hamas. But I really don't like, to hear lies about Hamas, because we have to know the truth, because otherwise we can't do anything without lies. So, first of all, it's up to the Palestinian people to decide who is going to run Gaza. It's not up to Israelis or to anybody else. This is my point of view as Democrat. Second, my point of view of Democrat, that in 2005, Hamas won the election in the occupied territory, and Hamas was ousted by Mahmoud Abbas in 2006. And then I always see that Hamas wants to destroy Israel, and it is under the Constitution. That's not true, because in 2018, Hamas changed its constitution, accepting the two-state solution. This must be known, because otherwise we cannot understand each other. Now I would like to come very briefly to this 7 October, this famous 7 October. Of course, I can understand the trauma of the Israelis, etc., etc. But please, imagine that you are watching a film, and then the 7 October, just one image of the film. So go backward, what's happening before and then afterward of this image. Before this image, prior to this image, you have had Gaza, surrounded by Israeli troops for more than 17 years, blocked, everything you can imagine, And then see what's happened. Now, move the film after the 7th of October, and they would see the horror what's happening. So you have to have the whole image, the whole image of the film, and not just to stop and say, how horrible is the 7th of October? Of course it's horrible, the 7th of October, but Before 7 October was more horrible, and after 7 October, even more horrible, even more worse. So we have to have the whole image. And now, once again, I'm not here to tell who is important, etc. Once again, the most important thing is to stop this war. What the Israelis are doing is crazy for them, for the whole region, for the Palestinians, but also for the Israelis. So please, I would say, look, the only thing to do now is to put the pressure to stop this genocide, because I do believe that it's a genocide, to stop it, because it will destroy the whole region. We have to stop it. And then after we stop it, after a while, we can then sit together and try to find what kind of the best solution. Otherwise, it will be hell for everybody, and really it will be terrible.
Thanks very much. I must see finishing thought.
Thank you, and thank you also, thank you Hiba for your comments as well, and Daniel. I would say to Dr. Balin, the implication that we're not ready to elect, or that we're not ready for peace, or that we are not ready as Palestinians to be a democracy, I think is incorrect. I think that the condition that we have lived in over the past 30 years, which is Oslo, has been a terrible condition. It is one in which we have not been able to choose our leaders, we have not been able to build our institutions, we have not been able to make change because we have not been free. So what we need is to be allowed to have our own country in which we can do that. And I can almost guarantee you that we will be a great neighbor to live next to. But we must be free. We must have a country of our own along 1967 lines with East Jerusalem and the West Bank and Gaza. And to get there, we need the international community to help us now. Because with every day that passes, and another 100, 200 Gazans being killed, and God knows how many more being maimed and wounded, it gets harder and harder to build this. So stop it now, let us be free, and then it's up to us to show you what we can do.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists. Thank you for virtually joining us. Now or future, definitely a conversation will continue. Very hard one, of course. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.